Thanks for tuning in to Trempealeau County Community Television. I'm John Kelly. I'm joined today with Megan Jensen,
Hello.
Trempealeau County Conservation Game Warden, and Ryan Lowry, the Northern Trempealeau County Game Warden. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about chronic wasting disease. We're going to be talking about some use of state lands and using an ATV and UTV on public trails. So we have the Southern and Northern Trempealeau County Conservation Wardens here. Can you guys kind of tell me where your zones? I'm sure they overlap a little bit, but general regions, I guess, where you guys patrol.
Sure. So I cover Southern Trempealeau County. So my administrative area is the southern part of the county, which would be Highway 95 in south. So anyone who lives or recreates in the southern part of the county, I'm your local warden. My phone number is 608-399-4453. So that's the phone number I can be reached at. And again, that's the Highway 95 south area.
And Ryan?
All right. And I cover the north. So it's 95 and north is my administrative area here in Trempealeau County. I also cover the northern 4 townships in Jackson County as well. So if anybody's got anything to pass on to me in those areas, my number is 715-533-1820.
Excellent, thank you much. Yep. Well, Megan, we have a large white-tailed deer population in our area, and one of the things people are probably familiar with the deer has been conversations on the chronic wasting disease, commonly referred to as CWD. Can you explain to me briefly kind of what chronic wasting disease is?
Yeah, so what it comes down to is a nervous system disease found in wild and farm-raised white-tailed deer, moose, and elk. So
it can span beside just the white-tailed deer. It does go into the moose and the elk as well.
It could, yep.
So what's the closest there's been a known animal with the disease to Trempealeau County? Has there been anything in Trempealeau County?
Yep, so just recently here within the last month or so, a wild white-tailed deer in Eau Claire County was found to be positive with chronic wasting disease.
So when someone finds or might think that there is a deer that's doesn't quite look right, maybe should they call right away, or are there a few things you should do? What are some real quick symptoms you could just look for? Yeah,
so there's quite a list of clinical signs of CWD. Those signs are listed on the TV screen right now for viewers to see. There's quite a list of them. If people see a deer that is showing those clinical signs of CWD, the Trempealeau County biologist Mark Rasmussen, whose phone number is also shown on the screen, wants to know about those deer so that we can look into that further. It's very important to the Department of Natural Resources, and I know to the people in Trempealeau County and the state of Wisconsin, that we protect our deer herd, and early detection of possible CWD deer is important.
And with the days being longer now that it's spring and we're going into summer, there seems to be more car deer accidents. You see, deer on the side of the road. With chronic wasting disease, is there any precautions people might want to take if they do see a deer on their property, if they want to move it out of the right of way, or if it's in traffic, or is there something they should do just to take note?
Yeah, so again, looking to see if that deer shows any clinical signs of CWD. If it does, contact Mark Rasmussen, the local biologist. We want to be careful that we're not transporting carcasses, deer carcasses from a CWD affected area outside of that area. We just don't want to spread it any further than maybe where it is. That the deer that was found positive up in Eau Claire County was found within a 10-mile radius of Trempealeau County, which has now made Trempealeau County a CWD affected county. For helping prevent any more cases to pop up.
And so now that Trempealeau County's kind of in this zone, if you will, for CWD, does that have any effect on baiting and feeding deer?
Absolutely. On May 1st of this year, baiting and feeding ban did go into place for deer, meaning that you may no longer bait for hunting purposes or feed deer for recreational purposes for at least the next 2 years. If any more CWD positive deer come up within Trempealeau County or an area within 10 miles of Trempealeau County, that could be extended, but for right now there will be a minimum, a 2-year ban on both baiting and feeding of deer. That is, no one may place out corn, mineral, salt licks, apples, anything that a deer might be attracted to.
Sure.
Food plots are legal though. They are
legal.
Are legal.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
So
you can still have a food plot.
Yep. So folks who have food plots for deer hunting, that is legal, just because it's it gathers deer a little bit differently than, say, a corn pile or a mineral block.
And you stated that 10-mile radius a couple times now. Is that kind of the standard then? If there's a deer that's found to have CWD, that they kind of look for the 10-mile radius, or is it larger or smaller depending on how many are found?
Yeah, so if a CWD deer is found, positive CWD deer is found, if there are any additional counties within a 10-mile radius of where that deer was, CWD positive deer was found, those counties are also considered a CWD affected county, and they go into a baiting and feeding ban. If the deer, CWD positive deer is found, say in the center of a county and there's no other counties within a 10-mile radius, then extra counties wouldn't be affected, just be that county that the
Sure.
CWD deer was found in.
And if you're caught disobeying some of these bans in place, are there penalties that can come into effect? And what are some of these penalties, if so?
Absolutely. So the reason why we have this baiting and feeding ban when there is a CWD positive deer found is because we want to make sure that we protect our Wisconsin deer herd. There's a lot of folks in the state who enjoy hunting deer and a lot of folks that enjoy just watching deer. So we want to make sure that the welfare of our white-tailed deer population is cared for. So should someone violate the baiting and feeding ban, there could be law enforcement action taking. So it's important that during this ban that folks do not put out any bait or feed for deer.
I could see some of the things I might be using to feed my deer being similar to what I might be feeding birds, wild birds. How does that correlate? Is there precautions I can take when buying bird seed and things like that to make sure it doesn't entice deer? Can you do that?
Sure, absolutely. So during the deer feeding and baiting ban, you can still feed wild birds and small mammals, but the important part is to remember to have that food so it's not accessible to deer. So that means rising it up to a level where deer can't access it. And if you put food out there and you thought you had it high enough that the deer won't get to it, but then you see a deer out there and
they can stand up pretty high.
They can stand up pretty high. It's then your responsibility to put that even higher in a place where deer cannot access it.
And one more time, I don't expect that we'll go through all the symptoms, but we'll have some images on screen. And if there are any questions, if you're seeing, who do we call one more time?
Mark Rasmussen. He's the local biologist for Trempealeau County. He's a great resource. And if anyone wants to do a little bit more research, we can't talk about all the CWD on this show, but the DNR website is a great resource for folks who want to learn more about CWD too. They can go to the DNR website and then just type in chronic wasting disease in the search bar, and there's a lot of really good information on there. When it comes to the hunting season, folks can look up where sampling sites are too if they want to get their harvest sampled for CWD.
Excellent. All great information on chronic wasting disease. We are in a ban here now for Trempealeau County for feeding and baiting. If you have any questions, check out the Wisconsin DNR website, and we'll have some more information on the bottom of the screen so you can get a hold of Mark Rasmussen, the biologist for Trempealeau County. One other thing with the warmer temps, people are going to start using the state lands for some maybe foraging, for camping and hiking and things like that. Can you tell me just a little bit about what types of fruits and nuts and mushrooms I can forage for or harvest on state lands?
Yeah, so on state lands owned by or managed by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, it is allowable to forage or gather edible fruits, nuts, or mushrooms for personal consumption. It's important to remember it's for personal consumption, not for profit. So you can't go harvest, say, morels on state lands and turn around and sell those. So it is allowable for fruits, nuts, and mushrooms for personal consumption to go out there and harvest on state lands. You may want to check, there may be some properties throughout the state that have special regulations that prohibit it, but in general it is allowable.
So is there like a bag limit or a weight limit for any of these types of things when you're saying for personal use, or it's just kind of, you know, if you're out there with a garbage bag and a half of morels, you know?
No, there's no bag limit per se for that. It's just the important thing to remember is that it's for personal consumption for the harvester.
Okay, and I know I've done a little bit of morel hunting, mainly just because it's good exercise and it's nice to be outside. And I took my dog with me, and she was on a leash. Are there any times when I might be able to take her off the leash when I'm out?
Yeah, so it's going to vary by property that you're on during the year, but on all state-owned DNR lands from April 15th to the last day in July, dogs must be on a leash, and that's to protect our ground nesting birds. So April 15th through the last day in July. There are a few exceptions, and those exceptions would be for dog trials, dog training grounds, and then where allowed for training for hunting, when the use of training dogs for hunting is open. Otherwise, April 15th, end of the July, dogs must be on a leash, and again, that's to protect our ground nesting birds.
Okay. And along with the hiking comes camping. How do I know if I'm able to camp on the state lands where I'm at?
Yeah, so in general, the only place on state property where you can camp would be in a designated campground or a campsite. So if you're out on a beautiful, state wildlife area, camping would not be allowed there unless there was a designated campsite there. In general, your camping is going to be at your state parks and state forests only.
That's a good thing to remember too, because no matter how hard you might try to not bring anything in and out with you, once you start camping, you could have litter of some kind, and we want to keep our state lands as clean as possible.
Yes, we do.
So if you're camping, you want to do some camping, check and make sure that the state lands you're going to be visiting does have designated camping. And then do state parks have different regulations other than state lands, such as natural areas or state wildlife areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the best place to look for what the regulations and rules are for the property you're visiting, because they do vary based on the type of property it is. State parks have a few different regulations than, say, your state wildlife areas. The DNR website is a great resource. You can look specifically for the property you're visiting. You can get maps there, any special regulations, but the state parks have their own set of rules and guidelines, and each state park throughout the state might have a little different one, so it's really important to just do a little refresher before you go visit to make sure that you're following the law for that specific property that you're on.
Once again, it comes back to just grabbing a brochure, checking online, or making a phone call to make sure that you are doing what's appropriate and what's regulated. And as always, I have to ask a couple quick safety tips. What can people do to try to defend against ticks and maybe poison ivy and poison oak and things like that?
Yeah. So recognition is key. Some of the state parks have diagrams showing what poison ivy looks like, so it's good if you can identify what it looks like. That will help you a lot.
3 leaves, let it be, is that a thing?
Yep, 3 leaves, let it be, and you know, just paying attention for it, looking out for it. As far as ticks go, we are starting the tick season. When you go out in the woods or in the prairies, just, you know, checking over yourself when you get in to make sure that you don't have any ticks on you.
Long pants if possible, and check your friends too if you're out there with them, and your dogs. Check your dogs. Megan, thanks so much for talking to me about chronic wasting disease and then some safe and proper activities for using our state lands. And if you just tuned in, you're watching Trempealeau County Outdoors. I'm joined now with Ryan Laurie, and we're going to be talking a little bit about ATV and UTV safety, about the regulations you need to have if you're going to be utilizing the trails, and maybe just some basic safety. First of all, let's talk about the regulation sticker I can see right here on the side of the ATV. When are they good for, and what type of vehicle needs to have it displayed?
Okay, so that's a registration sticker we got right there.
Okay.
Oddly enough, currently expired, but I do have the valid stickers right here.
Excellent.
All ATVs operating on public lands need to have their ATV registration stickers displayed.
Okay.
And you can renew them. They last for 2 years. And once that renewal, or once that sticker is up, it always ends in the last day of March. You just apply for a renewal, you'll get stickers in the mail and be able to place them back on your machine. But in the meantime, sometimes our printers take a little while to print off these new tags for you. You just have to carry documentation that you have purchased a new ATV registration in the meantime, so we know that they're coming in the mail and that you have your machine properly registered.
So real similar to what you might be used to registering your car.
Your car, yep.
So you just, so even if you don't have the new sticker, if you're paid up, you have the form with you, have that ready if you're going to be using the trails. Let's talk a little bit about when you wouldn't need a trail registration for your UTV or ATV.
Okay, so if you have it for private or agricultural use, you can have, it's kind of a private land registration. It costs $15, and it's good until you transfer the ATV or sell it or get rid of it. It's good for operating it for just personal use on your own property or from farm to farm doing agricultural work.
So along with the regulations stickers that we saw on the front of the ATV and UTV, I noticed that some of the machines have been driving by on the trail have these license plates on the back of them. Can you tell me a little bit about these license plates, how they need to be displayed, and who needs them?
Okay, well, we'll start off with who needs them. Everybody who's operating on state lands or public trails needs to have a rear-facing license plate. And on that license plate, you're required to have block letters and numbers that are representative of your ATV registration.
Okay.
So it's just be sure to have it in a color contrast. Usually just black and white is the easiest way to do it, and make sure that's on the back of your ATV.
So this 7454 corresponds with the registration that's on it. Okay.
Yep.
And the CA is also part of it too.
Yep.
Okay. So essentially your regulation number goes on the back, and you can go to the hardware store or wherever and get these kind of like mailbox letters or kind of boat letters or something like that.
Letters, mailbox stickers work just fine.
And what about for lighting on this? I don't see that there's any license plate lighting on here. Is that okay, or is it only for day use on the trails? How does that work?
That's fine. There's no requirement to have it lit like you do a regular motor vehicle license plate. It just got to be on the ATV.
Okay. And I see right between us here we have a helmet, which I hope everybody uses when they're out using their ATV and UTV.
Yep.
But is there regulation to ensure people use their helmet when they're out using an ATV, UTV?
There is, and we're always going to advocate that whether you're on your own private property or on the trail system or just unloading it or doing something small, always be sure to be wearing a helmet. Safety is our main concern out there. We want everybody to be safe. We don't want anybody getting injured or thrown off your machine. Even a slow turn, unloading it off a trailer, these ATVs are pretty tippy. They can roll on you. So having the appropriate headgear is the way to go. But in terms of regulating it, Wisconsin law states that anybody under the age of 18 needs to be wearing a ATV helmet.
Okay.
And it's got to be Wisconsin DOT approved.
Okay.
So
And you can tell by the sticker located right here on the back.
So there'll be a sticker located on the back, like you said. Bike helmets, you know, if you got a small child with you, bike helmets will not do. They have to be a DOT approved ATV helmet.
And kind of hand in hand with proper safety gear is proper safety instruction. Can you tell me a little bit about safety courses? Are there safety courses available through the DNR for people or for schools so they can get some training? And who should be taking these classes?
All right, everybody who's born on or after January 1st, 1988 needs to have an ATV safety course. They're offered through the DNR online. The DNR has partnered up with a few online organizations to where you can take an online safety course. It takes a few hours and I think costs just a little over $20 to do it. But if you're born on or after January 1st, 1988, you need to have that course in order to operate your ATV on the state lands, state trails.
That's a pretty small price to pay to maybe learn something that could save you a lot of money and suffering in the long run if you grab one thing out of it and remember it.
Yep.
And along with those safety instructions and things like that, is there anything people should know about drinking and driving, or drinking and using their ATV? Do the same rules apply as would if you're boating or if you're driving a regular motor vehicle?
Yeah, the easiest way to put it is, you know, if you're not going to operate your car after the amount of beers that you've had or the amount of alcohol that you've had, don't be operating an ATV. There are OWI laws regulating alcohol consumption and use of ATVs, just as there is for boats and snowmobiles. So, you know, we want you guys to go to these establishments that are along the trails, but you know, just keep your consumption in moderation.
And speaking of snowmobiles, I know that this is also a snowmobile trail that we're standing on today, but not all snowmobile trails are ATV trails. Not all ATV trails are snowmobile. How do you know which trails are available for me to use which vehicle and when?
Okay, that
kind of a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot there. The easiest way to put it is to either go online through your county to check and see what trails would be open to both, or go on to the DNR webpage, or I think Wisconsin ATV Association, their website's got it as well. More and more trails now are having that dual use in the winter, kind of because of the lack of snow and people's desire to get out in these new UTVs that are totally comfortable to be riding in the winter. Yeah, so for the trails that are actually open to both come wintertime, the Buffalo River State Trail that we're on today is open to both. You have to look and figure out when snowmobiles are allowed on the trail. Those can be, the snowmobile trails can be shut down for periods of time due to lack of snow. And because a lot of the snowmobile trails, the actual snowmobile specific trail, goes across private land, landowners do not wish to have their land all tore up when the conditions are soft and not conducive to snowmobiling.
And I know things can maybe get a little bit tricky to explain or even understand when you're talking about a personal use or agricultural use ATV or UTV, when you're maybe going from a field on one side of a road to another side of the road, and you might have to use maybe a few hundred yards of roadway. How does that work? What type of regulations or stickers do you need to have for that? Is it still the same, or is there something you should know when you are making those transitions between fields?
No, just for agricultural use, you got to be going from agricultural property to another property, and it's got to be designated for agricultural use. You just can't be pleasure cruising over to your neighbor's house. It's got to be for specific farm work, so to say, and you have to be you're then allowed to operate on a road that's not a posted road route.
Okay.
And just be sure to obey all regulations when you are operating on that road. Be sure to have your lights on and be operating to the far right side of the road. You don't have to operate in the ditch or anything. Just be sure that you're on the far right side of the road and maintain a slow speed. We don't want you flying up and down the roads and surprising cars on turns. You know, safety is a big issue there. So keep your road use to a minimum if you can, but we understand for agricultural practices it's a lot easier and a lot more advantageous to hop across the road to access a different field when you're working. So,
and kind of along with that, what about trails that might take somebody across a traditional roadway? How does that work? Is there posting? How do you know if the road you're driving on is also an ATV friendly roadway?
Okay, so ATV road routes will be posted. So if you're going to be going to, say, like a gas station here in Oliva, there'll be ATV road route signs marked by a green arrow and ATV signs showing you and guiding you where to go and where you can safely operate that machine to get gas or food or go to an establishment in the town. Some towns have all their town or city roads, like Strum has their city roads open to ATV use.
Okay.
But you have to be going to and from the trail. They're not just free to be zigzagging around on. But you have to, once again, check with your county and your local government to see what trails or how you're able to access the trails, road routes, and different establishments in the town.
And I would think watching for proper signage would be helpful too. I know you guys do a real good job of making sure that there's bright colored signs on any of the roads that are allowing the ATVs on them. And if you don't see that sign, maybe err to the side of caution and not take that route. And before we run out of time here, Ryan, I want to talk just a little bit about having a passenger with you on one of these ATVs or UTVs and certain regulations that go along with that as well, especially if, say, the operator is over 18 or under 18.
Okay. So in terms of passengers, a lot of ATVs have manufacturer suggested warnings never to have a passenger on the back of the ATV. As long as you're both wearing helmets and operating safely, that's fine under our regulations, but it's always safe to heed the manufacturer warranty and don't double up on a lot of these ATVs that don't allow for that. When it comes to UTVs, everybody's got to be seated in a manufacturer approved seat, so a manufacturer designated seat, so to say. So it can't be like a car seat strapped in between two seats or strapped to the back in the bed of the UTV. It's got to be an actual seat in that UTV.
I would think if it's appropriate to use in your vehicle that you're using on a traditional roadway, it's probably the way you should be going with your UTV as well.
Yep.
And what about the seat belts in the UTVs?
Everybody's got to be wearing a seat belt. Once again, that falls back on safety. We want everybody to be safe out there on those trails. So just like the Wisconsin DOT says for vehicles, click it or ticket. Sure. It's kind of the same thing for the trails. We want everybody to be operating safe and make sure you got that seatbelt on.
Sounds great, Ryan. Lots of good information. As always, if you have any questions, go ahead and check out the Wisconsin DNR website, or you can check the number at the bottom of the screen, give them a call, and they'll be able to answer anything you have to do with ATV safety or with any other conversations that we had earlier today on the Trempealeau County Outdoors. I want to thank you again for watching the Trempealeau County Outdoors. I'm John Kelly. I've been joined today with Megan Jensen, our Southern Trempealeau County Conservation Warden, and Ryan Laurie, our Northern Trempealeau County Conservation Warden. If you have any questions with any of your outdoor things, be sure to check out the Wisconsin DNR website. So this is a hognose snake.
Eastern hognose snake. So, and he should start flailing. He is not.
And although he might be kind of looking tough and everything, he's harmless, I hope.
Yep, he is harmless.